Hey there. Welcome to another episode of Sip and Sew with Ashley. In today's episode, I really want to talk about my creative journey and also how I even got started with sewing. When I was younger, I really did enjoy creativity. I loved art. I loved music and singing. Some specific memories I had were in middle school. I loved my art class and my art teacher. I remember having this specific project that we were working on where we had to take a photo of our face, and it was a photo with a bright light in our face, but it casted different harsh shadows, and we had to paint that abstractly. And I remember just really enjoying that process and how my art teacher actually complimented me and used my painting as an example to other classes. And I was just like, wow. I mean, I was kind of shocked about it, but I loved it. And then I also, like I said, enjoyed music. I sang in churches as a younger kid. And I remember specifically shutting myself out in the garage and just belting out like Disney songs or worship songs or whatever, and just really playing with my voice and just experiencing my voice and all the sounds that it makes. And I just really enjoyed those moments. But as life went on, actually starting in kind of towards the end of middle school, going into high school, I actually put those things down in my life and I didn't touch them for years. I think partly the reason for that was, one, that is actually when my relationship with the Lord was kind of distancing away. The other part about it was my sister, who is actually 5 years older than me, very artistic, also musical. I just had this thought in my head that I just didn't want to be in her shadow. And not that anyone was putting me in her shadow, and not that anyone was comparing us, because I don't recall experiencing those things. But I just didn't want to be in that shadow. And I just felt I felt intimidated and didn't want to be compared to her. She's really artistic and she's great. I just put those things away and set those things aside. And it wasn't until my early 20s where I just came to a really low place in my life. And it's part of my testimony where God just really ripped the rug from under my feet and really just got me alone with no distraction, but just like, listen, you need God. And he really just put me in a place where I was just really provoked to look to him. And so in that place, I actually was like, you know what? I'm going to dive into that again. I'm going to reopen that box in my life and just see what's there. And so I actually decided to draw this picture from, I think I just found it on Google. And I was drawing it, just something very simple, a basic sketch. And after I was done, I was like, wow, that actually turned out better than I thought. And I even showed my mom, and I think I showed my sister, but they were basically both very surprised. I mean, I was surprised. And I was like, wow, like, how come I didn't do any of this for so many years? And it was just like, what in the world? Like, I could have been doing this, this whole entire time. And then along with that, I remember essentially I got this guitar that was like almost brand new. It was an electric acoustic guitar. It had an amp. And it had new strings and nice case and everything for $50. And I was like, that's a sign. I need to get this. And in this part of my life, I was like looking to God, but I was also not for sure if I was going to dedicate my life to him. So I was just in this process of trying to figure out who I was. And So I got the guitar, and surprisingly, I remembered how to play it, because in elementary school, we had these guitar lessons that we took in class, and I was pretty surprised. Very basic chords, and then I just looked up chord sheets and things like that. But I was like, wow. And I was also surprised how I was able just to sing and play and it felt like it was natural. It felt like it was nothing strange. Obviously, I had to grow in many areas, and still do, but it was just really interesting how that came to be. And so I realized, like, oh my goodness, this is a part of who I am. And it was just really like an awakening to something, a part of me that I had been shutting out for so many years, from middle school into my early 20s. And the other fun thing was meeting Boren, my husband. He actually really started to pull that out of me as well, and was such a great help for me to discover, my giftings and what has always been there. So that has been kind of like my journey of creativity. And now I'm at a place of God saying, hey, it's important to be faithful with your creativity. It's important to be intentional about how I made you to be. And so I've been on that journey of doing that with the Lord. As far as sewing goes, quite an interesting story. So my first time ever sewing in my life was actually in middle school. And I remember sewing these like pajama shorts. And like, they were super cute, but they actually didn't even fit me. They were too small. But I was like, man, this is so fun. I love it. And I really enjoyed it. But after that class, I think it was in the 8th grade, I didn't do anything else with that. And I certainly didn't have a sewing machine for myself. So yeah, that kind of was just put aside for many, many years. And then it actually wasn't until I met Boren and we were just dating, and my mom was given a sewing machine and she wasn't really using it. So I took it upon myself to borrow it. And I decided it was Boren's birthday, and I decided to make him a quilt. And so I cut out squares of just random clothes of mine that were old, and all mixed matched, like pink, blue, purple, all kinds of different designs. And I was like such an amateur, didn't feel necessarily confident in what I was doing, but was like, you know what, I'm going to do this. And so, I started with all these squares and I just began to sew them together. And then, so you had one side of all these mixed matched like squares of materials and clothes. And then on the other side, I sewed a black blanket on that side. And then I cut out other fabrics to make a tree on that side. And then I just put a scripture verse that talked about being like the tree planted by the waters. And I was just so excited to give it to him. And he loved it. I think he even kind of shed a tear. So it was definitely a good gift. But I was like, man, I love this. This is so great and fun. And after that, again, I kind of just, would kind of dabble here and there with sewing, but not really on a regular basis. And so that was in Texas, where we met in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And then moving to Kansas City in 2015, just building our community of people and getting to know people. I made friends with a lady here, and she's a lovely lady, an older lady, and I just love her to death. She's so awesome. And we would have lunch every so often together and just keeping in touch. And so one day she was like, hey, she was sharing with me about the sewing room that she's wanting to put together in her house. And she was just excited about it, and all those things. And so I was like, oh my goodness, actually, that's great, because I wanted to tell her an idea that I had of starting to sew, and I wanted to make some aprons. And so she was like, you should totally come, join me, and we should do this, every week or so. And so that's basically how I got started in sewing again. And I love it because she is way more experienced than I am. And so I loved just learning her tips. And I love her sewing room, and it has all the things. And she's also loves recycling materials and buttons and all the accessories that come with those that come with sewing. So it's just been such a great time with her, and I really enjoy a conversation. So that's kind of how I got into sewing. I want to tie my story into a biblical perspective, and that would be how God is a creator. And I mean, he's the one that fashioned and created this entire world, the universe, all the things that we see on the earth and in the heavens and all those things. And how this creator, our Father, made us. And he made us uniquely, and he made us not the same as anyone else. And we're all different. And the scripture that comes to mind is Psalms 139, where it talks about how we are knitted and fashioned and formed in our mother's womb, and how he put and placed gifts and talents and passions in our lives before we were even conceived, before we were even born on this earth. And how none of those are mistakes. And basically how he enjoys seeing us be faithful with those things. He enjoys seeing our journey with our own creativity. And it also provides a atmosphere and opportunity for us to fellowship with him, to bring him in to be a part of our creative journey, to be a part of, if it's drawing, if it's painting, if it's poetry, if it's photography, or whatever creative aspects there are, he enjoys being a part of that because he is a creator. So I've really loved reminding myself of those things, of how, man, I've shut that part of my life down for many years. But how now I'm realizing the importance of that and how it actually gives us life and it actually brings refreshment to us. I want to take a pause for a moment and just ask you to leave a comment and share, what are your creative outlets in your life? What do you like to do? What is life-giving to you? If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel for more inspirational, encouraging videos. We love sharing our experiences with you and our stories and testimonies. And we also love hearing your feedback on how it's been encouraging to you. Just some tips that I feel would be helpful in your creative journey would be, one, being intentional on putting some time aside to be creative, putting some time aside and scheduling that part of your day to dive into those things that are life-giving. The next step I can think of is just start. I think sometimes we can feel overwhelmed with, where do we start? Where do we begin? This is overwhelming. But actually, the starting point is just whenever you choose to start. There is no fixed starting point. There is no, I need to have this and I don't have that. And if I only had this, it's just a matter of just starting and continuing on after you do that. One of the biggest things that I have to remind myself, even now, I mean, I'm definitely not someone who has arrived, but that would be to give myself permission to be free. That there are no boxes of creativity. Like, for instance, when it comes to drawing or photography or music even, those things are really close to our hearts. I feel like creativity is such a vulnerable thing because it's a way of how we express ourselves and how we commune with God. But sometimes people like to put boxes on how those things should be. But there are no boxes. Doesn't have to be a box. And how we can give ourselves permission to be free and to step outside of those boxes. And that's okay. And God enjoys the journey and the process with us. If you loved this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and spread the word. We just really want to encourage other people in their journey and walk with Jesus. Thank you so much for being a part of the Doulos Clan family. We are super grateful for your support, and we love having you on this journey. Until next time, see ya.